No, it was, I just sat down. I just sat down.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us for the April 24, 2024 meeting of the Chicago Teachers Pension Fund Claims and Service Committee meeting. For the record, I am recording Secretary Lois Nelson and also chairperson of this committee. This meeting is being held in person at our office at 425 South Financial Place. The Claims and Service Credit Committee includes 5 CTPF trustees, and a quorum for this committee is 3 trustees on site. Committee members include Trustee Paula S. Barajas, Victor Ochoa, Maria J. Rodriguez, Quentin S. Washington, and myself, Lois Nelson. The committee is meeting today to consider return to work matters. Please note the following. Access instructions for remote attendance and instructions for in-person attendance have been posted on the fund's website. All participants, please wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking, and please limit discussion from each trustee to 3 minutes. Please note that for our staff and trustees to focus on the business of the meeting, we will not be responding to messages from participants using the Zoom chat feature. Please forward questions to memberservice@ctpf.org. Public participation. We will now move to public participation. Do we have any members of the public who wish to be heard? Please raise your hand or send a note in the chat. Please limit your statements to 3 minutes each. Do we have anyone?
We do not.
The roll call. Please call the roll.
Committee members, Trustee Barajas,
Present.
Trustee Nelson,
Present.
Trustee Ochoa,
Present.
Trustee Rodriguez,
Present.
Trustee Washington.
Thank you. We have a quorum as required by the Open Meetings Act. Trustee Quentin Washington is remote, and he will be admitted upon approval to the meeting. Okay. You want to call Quentin?
Well,
And then the others? Mhm.
The others first. I'm just trying to see if he's actually here.
Oh, I see.
I didn't hear
Okay.
his voice, and I'm trying to log on to Zoom to see if Trustee Washington is actually in attendance.
Okay, thank you. So would you please, okay.
And he's here.
Okay.
Now-
Okay, and now continue. Mhm. We'll continue with other trustees who are remote. Mhm.
There's a section, section 3.
Trustee Riley, okay, is that Trustee Sharon Riley, remote? Here, has indicated that she wanted to be remote. Okay, okay, I'm sorry. All right, the Open Meetings Act allows for remote participation by a trustee if a quorum is physically present, which for this committee is 3 members. And a member cannot physically attend due to personal illness or disability, employment, public body, business, family, and other emergencies, or unexpected childcare obligations. Trustee Riley, Sharon Riley.
Yes, I'm here.
Does she have to
Trustee,
state a reason?
you know,
The attorney, does she have to
there's
state
a
a reason?
question here because this is a committee meeting that she does not have to attend. So she may not need a reason to be remote.
Well, okay, let me. I'll just speak it out because it might get-
Okay, got it.
For your purposes, trustee Washington is the member of the committee. So the remote
Mhm.
attendance for full participation is allowing for trustee Washington to participate
Mhm.
and enable to vote. Not that I'm anticipating much of a vote here today. The other attendees, what you guys have done typically is just acknowledge that you have trustees who are not
Right.
parts of the committee here. So for this vote here, trustee Washington is the one that we're doing for the full participation because he's the voting member of this committee.
Mhm.
So, excuse me,
So you want to hold
She's
that?
not.
what,
So you want to
Question.
hold that vote now?
Yeah. So yeah, so we'll do is you'll do the motion for trustee Washington. The other attendees, if you want to allow them, if you want to acknowledge their presence and then promote them up to a panelist, I don't have a problem with that. But for purposes of any votes, they do not vote. Trustee Washington votes.
Okay,
Okay, does that make that clear?
that's clear now.
right?
Okay,
So are you making a motion, trustee Rodriguez?
Oh, no, and I was just asking, yeah, no, that's what I was going to say, is for the committee members. And thereafter, will the others who are not committee members still be acknowledged that they're on Zoom?
Oh,
So
that's
for the
what he
agenda?
said.
Yeah, oh,
But
okay.
right now, we
Okay,
need to
sorry.
bring trustee Washington into the meeting as a member.
I'd like to make a motion that trustee Washington enters the meeting, please.
You have a second? Okay.
Sorry, trustee Washington, can you confirm that the reason you're unable to attend is either for work, family emergency, care of a child, or a personal illness?
Yes, I am at work.
Okay, thank you so much.
Oh. Does-
Okay, so. Mhm.
Question, attorney, just, how do we fit that in, that, how can you be working and on a committee meeting?
Well, he may be at work, he may have some time, he may be at the school or at the office, and he's able to attend while we're doing this. But so that's like how he does his work schedule, as long as he's confirmed to us that he's at work, he fits the exception. I don't, what he's worked out with at his school, for my purposes, that's not as important.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not voting on something that we're going to get ourselves in trouble.
Yeah.
Because
There seems to be no problem with that. Can
no,
we,
I'm just
continue,
confirming from
please?
the attorney.
No, can we continue, please?
Go ahead and have the roll call.
Yeah, roll call.
The roll call.
Thank you. Trustee Barajas,
Yes.
trustee Nelson,
Yes,
trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
Abstain.
So it's proved. You had three members vote for it, I think they can hear me. You had three members vote, so he's allowed to participate remotely.
that's,
So next, you would now call the non-committee attendees and just acknowledge their presence, the remote ones. And I know we have President Blackwell, who's a non-committee member, is also in attendance.
right. So there, you can continue.
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
Sorry about that.
thank you.
Sometimes I speak lawyer.
That's okay. This is great because this is the first time we've done it in this way. Mhm.
Thank you. Non-committee members, trustee Blackwell. Trustee Price Ward. Trustee Riley,
Here,
trustee Benson. Trustee Woods.
I'm sorry, I just joined. Yes,
Is that trustee Benson?
yes, it is. Trustee Vincent.
Thank you.
Is the recording starting over?
No.
Was the recording going on?
No, that was someone else.
Okay, thank you. Now, approval of minutes. Is that at this time prior to? Okay. Okay, we will now entertain a motion and a second to approve the April 11th, 2023 return to work hearing minutes.
So move.
Okay, second, yes,
Second.
thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Trustee Barajas,
Yes.
trustee Nelson,
Yes,
trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
Abstain.
Trustee Washington.
Yes.
That's 4 ayes and 1 abstention.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. I will now entertain a motion and a second to approve the April 13th, 2023 return to work hearing minutes. And those were presented to us prior to this meeting. You may call the roll. I'm sorry.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Trustee Barajas,
Yes.
trustee Nelson,
Yes.
trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
Question for the attorney. I was not present at that meeting, so do I abstain or vote no?
If you reviewed them and you're satisfied with them, you can vote to approve them. If you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel comfortable, then you can abstain.
Abstain. Thank you.
trustee Washington.
Yes.
That's 4 ayes and 1 abstention.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. I will now entertain a motion and a second to approve the April 25th, 2023 return to work hearing minutes. Did we do that? Okay, we got confused. Okay. We did. Okay. All right, so thank you. The minutes are approved. Now the 27th. Oh, okay. That's what I was asking. Okay, okay.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Trustee, excuse me, trustee Barajas,
Yes, even though I was not here. Yes, even though I was not here, I was able to read the minutes. So yes.
trustee Nelson,
Yes.
trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
Yes.
trustee Washington.
Yes.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
did.
No, that was for the 25th now. Okay. All right, so now we'll go to the 27th, April 27th. Okay. I will now entertain a motion and a second to approve the April 27th, 2023 return to work hearing minutes.
So move.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Which, I'm sorry,
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for the 27th.
I'm just going, a question on the date, because you kept on going back and forth. What is this last
This is
date
the 27th.
of?
I'm sorry, April 27, 2023.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Okay, so now we have a motion and a second, and we need the roll.
Yes.
Trustee Nelson,
Yes.
trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
Yes.
trustee Washington.
Yes.
That's 5 ayes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved, and just a little note is that we have not had any previous meetings, return to work meetings since these particular dates. And that's why we're behind in improving. So everyone had received these, the notes from each of these dates prior to our meeting today. Is that correct? Okay.
Can I
Okay,
ask
now
a
we,
question or?
sure.
Yeah. My question is, why are we here a year later when decisions should be made? Usually like 30 to 60 days. A decision for the members. So a decision was made and it was carried through? No, it has to wait till they're approved?
I guess I want to make sure.
We have not
I just
had a
wanted
committee. I
clarification.
just want to add that we have not had a committee meeting.
Right.
Okay, since these dates, since April 27th of 2023. And now we're in April of 2024.
So are you asking, I want to make sure I understand your question.
Right, no, I
Are you
understand.
asking why we haven't had a committee meeting since then?
Right, because I know when well, I guess Judge Hardigan was the presiding retired judge over this, or officer. So usually he says he'll give a deadline when a final decision will be made on the hearings for the members. And if it's 30 to 60 days, usually 30, 60 days, if he gives it, if he allows an extension. So my question is, nothing moves or passes through until we approve on the decisions, is this correct?
Well, I guess,
Can I
Sec-
ask you something before
Okay.
you answer?
okay.
In our closed sessions, we have been told of certain decisions that were made. Am I correct in that, Hurtado?
In the past, the decisions were, the recommendation of the hearing officer was decided, the board decided whether to adopt those recommended
Mhm.
findings or not in closed session.
In
I
closed
think
session.
I think we've learned from our new fiduciary council that really should be an open session, but
Mhm.
nevertheless, the timing is the same. The board does not decide whether to adopt a hearing officer's recommended findings until after there's been a hearing and after the hearing officer has issued his or her recommended findings.
Mhm.
So now we are with the stage of having a hearing with respect to this member's return to work appeal. And so that once this is completed, generally the hearing officer will issue the findings within 30 days. Well, I should back up.
Okay.
Because there will be transcription
Mhm.
of the proceedings, which will be then disseminated to all parties. And then both the fund and the member will have 30 days within which to submit their proposed findings. And then from that date, the hearing officer will issue his or her recommended findings. So it's usually about 60 days before you will get a recommended findings from the hearing officer. That sometimes can be longer because in some cases, the hearing officer will leave the record open for a while so that the member can submit additional
Which has been
exhibits.
done in
It
the
has been
past.
done. Yes, it has been
Mhm.
done. It's, as you know, sometimes with a member, they're not quite as used to
Mhm.
the proceedings, so they don't have all the exhibits submitted like we presumably do. They may have exhibits they would like the hearing officer to consider. So they could take longer than 60 days if that record is kept open for a while.
Mhm.
So my question to Mr. Hurtado, then we're saying then there were 5 that the records were still left open because a year is a year. We're talking about April 11, 2023. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and one which we got a text message from the executive director that it was resolved. So just my question, because of timeliness, because I get these questions from the members. Why did it take a year? I could see.
I don't know that that's a correct premise, that it took a year. When the member was first advised that they had exceeded the limitations was
Right.
probably a few months ago. And then as soon as they determine, we send them a letter and give them 30 days within which to,
Right,
within which to request
No,
a
I
hearing.
understand they were
So-
heard. I will understand, but I'm saying, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I just want clarification and, because it's a big responsibility. One sentence.
Excuse, if you're finished, were you
Well,
finished?
yeah, no,
And,
Do you want to answer them?
yes, yeah, the attorney, yeah, because I want to make sure, yeah. Following the procedure, a year that, and I understand, and then they had their appeal. And you're right, and I agree with you, what you're saying. In certain circumstances, the judge would leave the record open so that more paperwork could be submitted. I understand that. But there were 5, or let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 minutes were different cases.
Those did not involve the persons that's appealing today. Those are prior cases, and they've probably all been resolved by now. So I don't know which ones.
Right, but why are we just voting on them now and not, why didn't we vote? sooner?
Oh, okay, but with regard to the minutes, at one time, the board would approve the minutes of its own minutes as well as the minutes of all of the committees that had meetings in between. Now we've learned through our new fiduciary council that each committee has to approve its own minutes. So that puts us in the position of sometimes having to wait quite a few months if a committee doesn't meet every month or even
Why
every
isn't a
quarter.
committee meeting? I guess that's it. It's just a friendly question. It's
Yeah.
just a friendly question.
Why is it what? No,
Not meeting that often.
it's just that each committee can have its own.
Can I answer that as chair of this particular committee? Different committees meet at different times.
Right.
We meet when we have hearings. That's our purpose. And so today we have a hearing and today we are meeting. So if that doesn't answer completely what you're asking, I'm sorry. But at this point, if it's okay with you, we will now turn the meeting over to our legal team because the person who is here for the hearing today is in fact here. So is that okay?
I think
With
Trustee
everyone?
Barajas had a question or
Oh,
comment.
that was her statement.
Oh, was it?
Well, unless you have another something.
No, I don't think any trustee here or person here is waiting or trying to wait on time for anybody. If you look at the dates of the documents that all the trustees received, everything is happening in the way it's supposed to be happening. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that no trustee here or legal counsel is stopping anyone from doing anything or dragging their feet on our members. We are all doing what we're supposed to be doing. And if you look at the dates of the documents in front of you, we're doing it in a speedy fashion.
And I'm not saying that, but I guess it's the new process because you weren't here before.
You're implying it, though.
I'm sorry?
You're implying it.
No, but there may be your interpretation. I said it was a friendly question to get clarification. That's what I was saying. The process was different before, but I guess that's the new process. And it's the first time we're following through with new
well,
council.
and
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, trustee.
Thank you. And this is our first meeting for this hearing, and the person is waiting. And so going forward, we will follow whatever we have discussed today. Thank you.
Are you now turning?
Oh,
it over to
I'm
the legal
sorry. I
team?
thought I had stated that.
Yeah.
I will now, or maybe it wasn't heard. I will now turn the meeting over to our legal team so that we can proceed with the hearing for this morning, scheduled for this morning.
Thank you, Chair Nelson. I'm Becky Gonzalez, Deputy General Counsel for the fund. And I would just like to introduce and let you know, we have here with us today our hearing officer, Mr. Charles Irvas. We also have our court reporter, Sally Durkin, who will be transcribing the hearing for us today. Our legal counsel, Mr. Will Ruffing, who will be representing the fund in the hearing today. And I believe we have our member, Miss Elizabeth Chambers, on remotely via Zoom for the hearing today. And I'll now turn it over to Hearing Officer Irvas.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Trustee Nelson, we will now proceed with the return to work hearing involving member Elizabeth Chambers. Ms. Chambers, are you present and can you hear me?
I'm Elizabeth Chambers. I can hear you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to go over the process for this hearing. We will begin the hearing with opening statements. And the opening statement first will come from Mr. Ruffing on behalf of the fund. And then Ms. Chambers, you'll have an opportunity to also give an opening statement. The opening statement is not the testimony part of the hearing for you. It is simply an opportunity to introduce your case. After that, we will proceed with the fund's case. So Mr. Ruffing will then put on the case and may call witnesses depending on how he wants to proceed. And Ms. Chambers, you will have an opportunity at the conclusion of any witness testimony to ask questions. We could call it cross-examination, but it's your chance to ask for clarification or to ask any question you want. At the conclusion of the fund's case, Ms. Chambers, you will then present your case. You have an opportunity to present any documents or witnesses. And then Mr. Ruffing will have an opportunity to cross-examine or ask questions. I also want to note that the fund members also may have an opportunity, if you so desire, to ask any questions of any of the witnesses. Once we're concluded with that part of the process, we will then have closing arguments or a closing statement by Mr. Ruffing and then by Ms. Chambers. And then as long as everyone is satisfied that everyone had their say and all the documents are presented and admitted, I'll close the hearing. Ms. Chambers and Mr. Ruffing, is everyone clear on how we're going to proceed with the hearing?
Yes.
And Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Chambers, are you prepared to proceed at this time as well?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to start with an opening statement by Mr. Ruffing, and then we will have an opening statement by Ms. Chambers. So Mr. Ruffing, at this time, you may proceed with your opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Officer. Good morning. Disconnect that. Good morning, everyone. Trustees, CTPF staff, our member, Elizabeth Chambers. Thank you all for joining us here today. The case before the committee today concerns whether Elizabeth Chambers, who is a CTPF retiree, who returned to work during the 2022-2023 school year, exceeded the return to work limitations found in the Illinois Pension Code, and thus whether her pension would then have to be canceled for the remainder of that year. The fund believes the evidence presented today will show that as part of CPS's required submission of payroll data, the fund received information indicating Ms. Chambers worked on more than 140 days during the 2022-2023 school year. And therefore, the fund believes the evidence will support a finding that Ms. Chambers exceeded the return to work limitation found in the Illinois Pension Code. Specifically, Article 17, Section 149 of the Illinois Pension Code prohibits a retiree from returning to work for the Board of Education or a charter school on a permanent or annual basis. The statute does, however, permit a retiree return to work on a temporary or non-annual basis or hourly basis, so long as the retiree does not exceed the limits that are set forth in subsection C6 of Section 149. And specifically for the 2022-2023 school year, that was 140 days. In this hearing, Ms. Chambers will have the opportunity to present evidence that the CPS payroll data is incorrect or that she did not in fact work more than 140 days. Each retiree has the burden of proving by a preponderance of the evidence that he or she did not violate Section 149. Ignorance of the law or exceeding the limits by just a little, while unfortunate and maybe entirely unintentional, is not a justification that permits the pension fund to circumvent the Illinois Pension Code. Additionally, for clarity's sake, and to ensure there's no confusion, Ms. Chambers has worked with CPS payroll staff and submitted a correction. The initial determination was that Ms. Chambers had worked 143 days, but we have received information, you will hear testimony that has been corrected according to the data that we have received, now 141 days. And the fund does not dispute that she has corrected 2 of these days. And thus, as it stands, the fund's current position is that Ms. Chambers worked 141 days during the 2022-2023 school year. And finally, the return to work, CTPF return to work policy does require a pre-hearing meeting to occur. And this did occur, and you will hear that this did occur with the member back roughly in the middle of March of this year to discuss the hearing, what sort of evidence could be presented, and what to expect more generally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ruffing. Ms. Chambers, do you wish to make an opening statement at this time?
No, he told all the facts that are submitted except for the other historical correction that's still pending.
Okay, is there anything else you want to add at this time for your opening statement?
No, because I'll have a chance later to, I just wanted to tell you exactly what payroll had told me and sub-services when I contacted them. So I'll have time later in the hearing to say those things.
That is correct, Ms. Chambers. You will have an opportunity to share evidence and make your case.
Okay.
At this time, so we're now concluded with the opening statements. Are there any documents that have been agreed to with respect to exhibits that we can admit at this time?
Ms. Chambers, this is Will Ruffing, the attorney for the pension fund. Did you receive, we should have sent you a packet of exhibits. The pension fund has 10 of them. Did you receive those?
Yes.
Okay, and we have received one that you sent us, which is what appears to be a payroll slip. Is that, you sent that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We have no objection to, entering your exhibit into the record. Do you have any objection to us entering our 10 exhibits? I mean, we will go through them one by one.
Okay.
Ms.
I have no
Chambers,
objection.
so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to admit the exhibits from the fund and the exhibit from Ms. Chambers into the record. So the record should reflect that the package of exhibits that were sent to Ms. Chambers and the payroll slip that was sent by Ms. Chambers to the fund, those exhibits are now admitted. At this time, Mr. Ruffing, you can make your case on behalf of the fund.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Officer. We would like to call the fund's first witness, Joe Campbell.
Sorry.
Yes. Can you come on up? Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Ms. Chambers, just so that you're aware, at this time, Mr. Ruffing is calling Ms. Campbell as a witness, and she will then provide testimony, and you will have a chance to ask her questions or cross-examine at the conclusion of her testimony. Before we start, Ms. Campbell, I need to swear you in. If you could raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear that you will testify to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Mr. Ruffing, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Joe. Can you give us, just for the court reporter here, your name and spelling of your name for the record?
Yes, it's Joe Campbell, J-O Campbell, C-A-M-P-B-E-L-L.
Thank you. Are you currently employed with the Chicago Teachers Pension Fund?
Yes,
How long have you worked at CTPF?
9 years.
And what is your current job title?
Manager of pensions and refunds,
How long have you held that position?
4 years.
And can you briefly just describe for everyone what your roles and responsibility in that role is?
In general, it manages day-to-day production operations that includes pension benefit setup, refund of contribution per member's requests, adjustment analyzation, and also analyzing data from the employer that includes CPS and resolution of escalations.
So in your current role, do you have any responsibilities as it relates to the return to work rules that are in place?
Yes.
And, we're going to dive into the statute in a little bit here, but can you briefly just give us an outline of what the return to work rules are?
Yes. So to summarize, the return to work rule is retiree can return to work, but not permanent or on an annual basis. They can
they have the opportunity to return to work with substitute or temporarily hourly, but not to exceed the 140 days.
And does the pension fund notify the members of these rules?
Yes.
How so?
They are notified, we send them letters. For this specific case, there is a letter sent, and also it is also on our CTPF website and also mailings of e-news.
In terms of the responsibility to track the dates, where does that responsibility lie? With the pension fund, the employer, or the teacher?
It would be for the retiree teachers.
Okay. And have you gotten a chance to review the records that have already been admitted to evidence with regards to Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
And what's your conclusion?
Upon the review of the records from the employer, it was included that initially the member was had a 3 days return to work violation, but after evidence, now it is a 1 day of exceeding.
So 141 days worked.
Yes, 141 days.
Okay. And I'm sure we will get into that one extra day in a bit. Can you please turn to CTPF exhibit number 1? For everyone else, it should be, I believe, on page 52 of any packets received. Yeah, and we can give people a minute, a lot of pages. Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, all right. Joe, do you see CTPF exhibit number 1?
I do, yes.
And are you familiar with this?
Yes, I am. Mhm.
What is it? What is it?
This is the letter that is sent to Ms. Chambers, explaining the return to work violation. In this letter, it addresses 143 days, but again, it is now 141 days after the reversal of the 2 days.
Oh, okay. And what day was this letter sent?
It was sent December 14, 2023.
Okay. And let's just go through some of the pages of this. As you stated, this is the first letter sent by CTPF notifying the member of the violation, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And so that $8,110 determined overpayment, that is not the current number that the fund believes is owed.
That is correct.
Do you know what the current number is? And if so, can you say it?
Yes, the correct amount is 6,330. I'm not 100% of the cent, but it is now in the 6,300.
Okay, thank you. And now, is it standard practice to send letters like this to members when they have allegedly exceeded the return to work limitations?
Yes.
And who drafted this letter?
We have a pension benefit coordinator that drafts the letter. And there is review by the pension supervisor, or myself will review the letter.
And we'll dive into it in a moment or two with the other exhibits. How does the fund, because I don't believe we discussed this yet, how does the fund become aware that a member a retiree has worked X amount of days? Where does that information come from?
We receive a file from the employer, in this case it's CPS, and then our benefit coordinator analyzes that files to determine if there are any limitations, if there's any exceeding days that the member have worked.
Okay. And, again, we'll probably touch on this, briefly, but just to make sure we don't forget about it. If a member is disputing working a particular day, what is the process for handling that dispute before, coming to a hearing like this? Is there a remedy that they would have?
Yes, the retiree or the member will execute the process, they will have to contact the employer and dispute the records from them. And it's up to the member to present that the records that was submitted by the employer is incorrect. We then in turn validate that those records are incorrect.
Thank you. And just finishing up with Exhibit 1 here, do you see, it should be on page 55, Form 761. Do you see that?
Yes.
Can you explain what that is?
Yes, this is payment method option that if the member, they can present this form if they request a hardship for payment that is going to reduce their payment from the 15%. It's an option for them.
Right. So it's one of the options they have. What about on page 56 here? We're still on Exhibit 1. It looks like Form 940. Can you explain what that is?
Yes, so Form 940 is the assignment of the debt benefits that they will use that for the payment method. I have to say that the member, Ms. Chambers, have already submitted 940 form.
Okay, let's move on to CTPF Exhibit number 2. That should be on page 57 of the large packet that people have. Okay, Joe, are you in Exhibit 2?
Yes, it's
Okay.
a table, yes.
Yes. Are you familiar with this?
I am, yes.
And can
yes.
you explain what this is?
Yes, the table is a condensed version of the file that we received from the employer that condense what is needed to calculate the exceeded days. So for the column 1, count is the count of days. And then column 2, it's the date of where the member worked. And column 3 is the hours that the member worked and rate of that hourly work, and compensation earned is the total for those hourly work. And lastly, the accumulative compensation adds on as the days are also add on.
And this is sent to the member, is that correct?
That is correct. It is included in Exhibit 1.
Okay. And just so we cross our T's, dot our I's here. The correction that CTPF received, because this is an outdated return to work chart of compensation, do you know the 2 dates that were corrected?
Yes, it is under line 141, which is May 22nd, 2023. Line 42, May 24, 2023.
Okay. And the specific days that the member has submitted to CTPF, do you know that as well?
Yes, it is under the dates of May 24, 2023, and also May 22nd, 2023.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Now, let's move on to CTPF Exhibit number 3. This is going to be starting on page 61. And then, Joe, do you recognize this document? And if so, can you explain what it is?
Yes, this is the raw data, I would say, that we received from the employer, CPS. And it gives the detail of the records that the member worked. So for the purpose of the calculation and analyzing the return to work schedule, we use, of course, as mentioned earlier, the dates, the amounts, and also the type of the member that they work. For this case, it is a substitute teacher.
And so you received this data from CPS?
That is correct, yes.
And you use it to create Exhibit 2, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. All right, let's move on to CTPF exhibit number 4. That is on page 64 of the big packet. And Joe, whenever you're ready, do you recognize this document?
Yes, it is a summary of CTPF return to work policy that is sent to the member. And it gives the detailed policy, and it also gives example of different scenario.
Does CTPF make this available to members?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is available to the member.
Okay, let's continue on to CTPF exhibit number 5. It's on page 66 of the big packet. Joe, do you recognize this?
Yes.
Explain what it, sorry, explain what it is. Thank you.
So this is Form 717, and it is the acknowledgement of CTPF rules governing return to work policy. And this is part of it is included in the pension retirement application that the member is required to sign when they submit their retirement application.
And whose acknowledgement form is this?
This is for Miss Elizabeth Chambers.
On page 2 of this exhibit, is that her signature on the back?
Yes, Elizabeth Chambers, yes.
And what's the date?
It says 8/31/18, so August 31st, 2018.
And is that a stamp in the right-hand corner there?
That is our imaging stamp of the received date.
So that's the date that CTPF received it.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. All right, let's move on to CTPF exhibit number 6. This is on page 68 of the packet. And then Joe, do you recognize this?
Yes, it is notice to return to work submitted by the member, Ms. Elizabeth Chambers, informing CTPF that she had returned to work.
And do members routinely fill this out when they do return to work?
Yes, they do, yes.
And again, it appears that there's a stamp, but this time at the top of the page. Is that correct?
That is the stamp of the received date, which is August 31st, 2018.
Thank you. Let's turn on to CTPF exhibit number 8. This is on page 70 of the packet. Oh, apologies. Let's do 7 first. That's on page 69. Joe, do you recognize this?
Yes.
Can you explain what it is?
Yes, it is a letter from Ms. Elizabeth Chambers requesting for hearing.
And that is, that's what we're doing right now, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So essentially, can you summarize the process just once again here when a member is notified of a violation?
So when the member is notified for violation, they have the option to have a pre-hearing, which I believe happened in March. And then after that, then the member has the option again to have this hearing, in which we are in the process now.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to exhibit number 8 now, CTPF exhibit 8 on page 70. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
And what is this?
It is to formalize that the hearing will happen on a specific date and time, and this is sent to Ms. Elizabeth Chambers.
Okay, let's move on to CTPF exhibit number 9, page 71 of the large packet. Joe, do you recognize this?
Yes.
Explain what it is.
This is our pension e-news that have updated information knowledge base for our fund, and return to work information is included in the e-news.
So this is, an email kind of newsletter, is that?
Yes, it is sent via emails for members that have emails in our system, and it is also sent via standard mail for members who does not have email in our records.
Okay, let's move on to the last CTPF exhibit number 10. It's gonna be found on page 96. 95. Okay, Joe, do you recognize this?
Yes, it is CTPF pension news.
And is this sent to members? Is this,
It is sent to the members, and it also has information, what's upcoming event, and of course, our return to work policy is also in this pension news.
this, what year or what time period is this one from specifically?
I believe this was fall of 2022.
Okay, so the year in question.
Yes.
Okay. Now we're almost done here. Just to kind of summarize, where you're at in terms of reviewing the data that you've received. The current situation, and correct me if I'm wrong, as it stands, Ms. Chambers, she's been found to be at 141 days. Is that correct?
That is the current situation, yes.
Okay. And if there was a dispute over that day, how would a member go about correcting or pursuing that dispute of the day?
Ms. Chambers will have to contact the employer and inform them that she is disputing this one day, and she will submit that records or document that it's been corrected. And then for CTPF, benefit coordinator will then confirm that from the CPS employer, yes.
Okay, and then two final questions. You've only received one correction from CPS, is that right?
That is correct for those 2 days, yes.
So one correction, 2 days.
Yes. Mhm.
And then just lastly, but housekeeping, if a member is found to exceed, can you briefly explain the pension overpayment in terms of it's like when the cancellation begins and how long it continues for?
Okay. So it cancels at that school year, which in this case, 2023. And once it's been determined that that is actually the actual exceeded days, then the overpayment will then be calculated, and there's options of payments.
So the overpayment is from the date 141 and beyond?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Chambers, at this time, you have an opportunity to ask questions or cross-examine Ms. Campbell. Do you have any questions for Ms. Campbell?
No, everything she said is accurate in my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Ruffing, do you have any additional witnesses or evidence in support of your case?
Would we be able to call the member herself as a witness? I do think that, will be illustrative of what's going on here.
You are able to do that? Is that something that you care to do at this time?
Yes, we would.
Okay, Ms. Chambers, you're being called as a witness now in the funds case. And so I need to swear you in. Are you prepared to move forward right now?
Yes,
Okay, so I will now ask you, do you solemnly swear that you will testify to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. At this time, Mr. Ruffing, you may question Ms. Chambers.
Thank you. Ms. Chambers, can you please, just for the court reporter, give us and the record, state your name and spelling of your name for the record?
Elizabeth Chambers, ELIZABETH CHAMBERS.
Okay, and we're gonna just go through some of, your background and history with CTPF and CPS, and hopefully, we have a better understanding of the 2022-2023 school year. When did you first begin working for CPS, though?
1989.
And which school did you first begin at?
I was not at one school when I started. I was in a program called Canal.
Okay, and throughout your career with CPS, have you been required to maintain a teaching certificate?
Yes,
And do you presently still hold any?
yes.
When did you retire?
June 2018.
Okay, so a handful of years ago. And did you contribute to CTPF when you were a full-time employee with CPS?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and did you return to work during the 2022-2023 school year?
Yes.
Was that at one specific school, or did you return part-time or substituting at different schools?
Different schools.
And what are the schools, if you could name them?
Mainly Lawndale School.
Okay. And did you have a consistent schedule working there, or was it, can you briefly just outline in terms of the 2022-2023 school year, was it a routine thing? Was it a certain day of the week?
It was generally 2 days a week at Lawndale. It was Wednesday, Friday, because I think Friday was the team day, and I was working as the case manager there. So that's where the bulk of my days were spent.
When you say case manager, what does that mean?
That's the special education teacher who is prepping cases for the IEP meetings.
Okay. So you're preparing cases, is that right?
Yes.
Does that involve instructing students?
That did not. But that was not the only time I substituted. I did have some jobs that were in front of students.
Okay. And so you said you were substitute teaching at Lawndale, and you don't remember the other ones?
Well, there were some other high schools. That was the only elementary school.
Okay. How did you keep track of the number of days you worked for CPS?
Generally just looking at Frontline.
Can you explain what Frontline is?
Frontline is the system where teachers will put in a date, request days off, and then that's how substitutes can accept the days. They can see which schools need a substitute, and you can accept right online.
Do you think Frontline miscounted the days?
I do.
Okay, why don't you just kind of explain what your position on that?
Okay, so when got the letter December 22nd from the pension board saying I had overworked, I sent in January email to substitute services. And can I read the letter exactly, the email exactly as they responded?
I have no problem with it.
That's a
So
question. Can I?
yeah, we will not object to it if that's what you want to do.
Okay. After I sent them a letter that's saying I believe that I had been overpaid for those days, or that they were on my record and I didn't work those days, they said, "Hello, Elizabeth. The CTPF receives this information from payroll. At that time, if you had an assignment scheduled in Frontline, payroll information would transfer from Frontline to Chronos and pay out regardless of whether or not you had swipes. This has changed since then and is no longer allowed. I'm including payroll services for assistance with your issue to see if and how you may be able to rectify this." So if you accepted a job in Frontline, whether you worked that day or not, that information was automatically transferred to payroll and you were paid for those days. So that's why I believe I did not. So I automatically saw 2 days that I knew I could not have worked because they were school improvement days, and substitutes don't work on school improvement days. So it was a faulty system, but now they say that is no longer the case. But in the 22-23 school year, that was the case.
Is there a specific date or dates in mind that you believe was a misswipe?
Was a misswipe.
Right, yeah. So just to try to, we have the correction for October 21st and December 23rd of 2022.
Okay. Well, those are the days, yes.
Yes, so that, the fund's position, just to kind of get to the heart of it, is that you're at 141 days.
Yes.
And I guess my follow-up question is, are you saying that there is other days outside of October 21st
Yes.
and December 23rd
I am
that you
saying that.
believe? Okay, and have you
That's it.
submitted that to CPS?
Beyond those days, yes. So I already have another correction sent to the board. I'm just waiting to hear if they have taken that off my record as well. But when you in that school year, if you were in Frontline, then you were automatically recorded as working that day, even if you didn't work that day. So I know on occasion I've gotten to a school, swiped in, and then the teacher shows up because she didn't take it out of Frontline. The clerk didn't take it out of Frontline. So you are automatically charged with having worked that day. And so I have a day that I'm disputing that's like that as well.
What is that date?
That's May the 8th or May the 9th, I believe. Let me make sure. May the 9th.
Sorry, I was muted there. You said you submitted the correction to the board. Do you mean CPS?
Yes.
Or are you talking the Chicago
Yes, Chicago
you mean
Public School.
CPS? When did you
Yes.
submit that correction?
This one wasn't submitted until recently because let's see. Yeah, it was just submitted recently. It wasn't submitted when the other 2 days were.
Okay, so today is Wednesday, April 24th. Do you think it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago? I know that your initial correction was in March.
Yeah,
So-
no, this was in April. This was maybe a week ago. It wasn't in March with the other 2 days.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, was that a form you filled out? What's the form like? Was it a paper form? Was it an email? How did you submit that April correction?
It's a historical correction. You have to get the payroll clerk at the school that you are correcting the day for to sign off on it, and then she submits it for you to payroll.
Do you by chance have a copy of that from the April?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Okay, just 1 second here. I want to ask a few more follow-ups. So you submitted that in April. You have the form. You don't know the status of that, though, with CPS, with the historical correction for May 9th.
I don't. I did get an email that said they had received it, but they haven't closed it yet. So usually when you submit something, they'll send you an email at the end saying that they closed it. So I haven't gotten an email to say it was closed, but I have gotten one to say it was submitted.
And they have not told you when they would get this back to you in terms of if they do ultimately determine the record should be corrected. They haven't told you when that would occur?
No, because the first one, they just took the money back about on the last paycheck, which was, I think, on the 19th, maybe.
Okay. Just a few more quick follow-up questions. Some of the exhibits that we had sent, exhibit number 5, CTPF number 5, that's on page 66 of the packet. Did you fill out that acknowledgement of CTPF rule form?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And same with exhibit number 6. Is that your signature and you filled out that form?
Yes, that's my signature.
Okay. One moment here. I don't believe the fund has any other questions for Ms. Chambers on direct.
Okay, Ms. Chambers, Mr. Ruffing has concluded with having called you as a witness. Do you want to clarify anything that Mr. Ruffing asked you at this time?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Chambers. Mr. Ruffing, do you have any more witnesses or evidence for the fund's case? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, I have a few concerns regarding what just happened. Should I?
Certainly.
Now, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have a few concerns as
Okay.
to what I've heard. and
Trustee
so
Nelson,
should I
then
wait,
we-
hold off or what?
No, if you would like to ask questions at this time, it is appropriate.
Okay, then I'll preface by saying that I am a member of the displaced teachers, substitute teachers with the Chicago Teachers Union. Therefore, I have some information, regarding specific things about concerning the subs. Now, she had mentioned frontline, and there is a remedy if a sub goes to a school and the teacher actually comes in. And that remedy is right here regarding school assignments. So if I can include this, and if she did, because she did mention that she had gotten in touch with CPS, and CPS did return the money for that particular day. So if that is correct, well, this is the remedy. If you accept an assignment less than 1 hour before the school start time, it says contact the school and they will, provide extra time for you to get there. But if a school fails to provide prior notification upon arrival that an assignment was canceled due to her saying that the teacher arrived, then you should immediately contact substitute services. That would be frontline. And who will approve payment for a half day if the person wants that half day, or help to secure a new assignment. Now, if I'm not correct, she mentioned that she contacted CPS because I assume she did not work at all that day. Is that, so we on the same line. I have a couple, of things that I heard.
I think Ms. Chambers would have to clarify that, but from what I'm hearing, she had showed up, request is outstanding. I mean, we were going to agree to keep the record open because, if she has an email showing the correction submitted, it's a little bit easier to track. CTPF has, been able to give CPS a call in the past to see, what the status of a correction is. So, she submitted a correction and does get the day removed. I mean,
Right.
that is not something we're opposed to. I don't know in terms of how much she worked that day. I'm not sure.
Okay, so the question would be if she actually worked at all anywhere else. And because if if the money is returned to her from CPS because of that mix-up, and let's say she went home and that was it, then she would not have that additional day. Now, that's number one, but let me just,
Oh, yeah, no problem.
while we're talking,
Yeah.
okay? Okay, and then the fact that substitutes do not, of course, as we know, work on institute days or whatever. So she had those two cleared. But there are also two mandatory days that it was agreed between the fund, the pension fund, and CPS that subs have to do mandatory informational days. And they have two mandatory days that are not counted toward that. Right now, 140, and starting the next year, 24, 25, it will go back to 120. But there are an additional 2 days that I didn't hear that she had been given credit for out of that 140. Or over 140, you see what I'm saying? Because those would be definitely mandatory days, which there's an agreement between CPS and the fund that those 2 days should not be counted.
What did you refer to those? They're not service days. They are.
No, these are different days.
Yeah.
These are mandatory days that a sub has to be part of, and they teach them, I guess, what is expected in terms of child abuse or whatever, those particular lessons that a sub has to learn before going into a classroom period. And they're mandatory. And Dan Hurtado knows about those mandatory days, that it was agreed between CPS and the fund that a sub would not be counted because they were not in front of children on those days. And they could not sub if they did not attend those days. So that's 2 additional days.
Yeah, I suppose if I could ask Ms. Chambers a follow-up, would that be?
Yes, and
Okay.
if you weren't, I was going to. but-
Yeah. Ms. Chambers, are you still there? If so.
Yes,
is
I
that-
am.
Is that ringing any bells?
Particular day.
That does sound familiar, but I don't know. I can't speak on it because I don't know the details like she does about those days.
Well, this is Trustee Nelson. At any rate, those days, did you, along with other subs, attend mandatory days to be apprised of what is expected of subs? Or you could not be a substitute or guest teacher?
Yes, I remember
Okay.
doing those.
Okay, and there were 2 of them. One should have been in August at some point before school started. And the other, I believe, may have been in the spring. But for those going forward, and I just want to add this, going forward, if you attend those mandatory days, write down which date they are and have those days in your record. Okay?
Will
Okay,
do. Thank you.
Okay.
And if I can ask for additional clarification, Ms. Chambers, you are saying that you do have a recollection then of attending 2 mandatory information days?
Yes.
Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to clarify from trustee Nelson is whether or not on the May 9th date that you spoke of, did you work at all that day or did you not work at all?
Yes, I went to the school, but the teachers, after maybe first period or so, the teacher showed up late, and the clerk had said she was gonna take it out of Frontline for me, but she did not until I asked for that correction.
Okay, so so that I'm clear, and this is important, you're saying that
Mhm.
you did not work that day?
I did not stay in front of children that day because the teacher took over.
Okay. Mr. Ruffing, do you have any additional questions on that?
Trustee Nelson.
Okay, just a sec. We want to finish what
did.
he's doing first. Mhm.
He just asked the attorney if he had any.
I'm sorry. Mhm.
I have nothing else to add right now.
Okay, we have another trustee that has a question.
Thank you.
Make sure your microphone is on, please, and
It is on.
Okay, so Ms. Chambers can hear.
Okay. Tell me if you can hear me, Ms. Chambers. This is trustee Rodriguez, Maria Rodriguez.
I can hear
Okay.
you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ruffing, so then there are some dates that were already cleared up, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, the only outstanding date is the one where she worked less than 1 hour?
That's what we're hearing today. We have not received documentary
Right.
evidence of that.
Right, but that's the only one that's
yes.
outstanding. The other ones were cleared?
Yes, October 21st and December 23rd were
Say those
instituted.
again, the 2 dates? That
The
were-
the correction that we received from CPS was, Ms. Chambers, correct me if I'm wrong, October 21st,
Okay,
2022, and December 23rd, 2022.
okay, thank you.
Excuse me, but those were different days from the mandatory days.
Yeah, those, they were
They were
corrected as
different.
institute
Mhm.
days, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Ruffing, do you have any additional evidence for your case?
No, we do not. We rest. Thank you.
Okay, so the funds case rests at this time? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so Ms. Chambers, at this point in time, you have a right to put on your case. Now, you've already testified and explained your situation, but this is your opportunity to explain anything further that you would like to. Do you have anything that you want to add?
Oh, no, I just want to say again how I think that Frontline has probably indicated, not just for me, but for more retirees, more days than they actually worked. Because if it was in Frontline, whether you worked or not, then you were paid for that day. So I have repaid money back to the board, to Chicago Public Schools, for days that I didn't work, but they had paid me in error. So I have paid that money back. So I don't know if I said that part.
Okay, and do you know which days you paid back for?
Those 2 that they approved of already are days that I paid back already. So the 3rd day that I'm willing to pay back they have not taken that money yet.
Okay, anything else you want to add in your case?
Excuse me, can I just conclude one thing? Is that,
Yes,
The
let
2
me make
days.
sure that Ms. Chambers, I just want to make sure, Ms. Chambers, did you hear me? Is there anything else that you wanted to add to your case before trustee Nelson asks another question?
That's it.
Okay.
I
Trustee,
just wanted to indicate that if, in fact, those 2 mandatory days are not deducted already, then she
Mhm.
would be below her 140 days. Is that correct?
That's
Yes, we
correct.
would need that correct. We would need that correction from CPS though,
Thank you. Mhm,
for the institute versus mandatory.
mhm.
Okay.
I'll just,
Oh, yes. Let's go in order then.
Thank you. And Mr. Ruffing, that's 2022 or 2023? I don't have that here.
For the two dates,
What, 22 or?
that's 22, yes.
22,
Yes,
thank you.
because this is the 2022.
And the 23 is 2022 as well, December 23rd, 2022?
Yes, the October and December dates were in 2022. And it sounds like Ms. Chambers is alleging that it's May 9th of 2023. I'm not sure what the mandatory days are. That would be,
I'm Googling it right
yeah,
now.
so,
Thank you.
Okay, and so if trustee, if you could identify yourself for the court reporter and then please proceed.
Okay, it's trustee Ochoa. I wanted to make sure that we address the document. I hope I didn't miss it, that Ms. Chambers sent in. I don't know if that was spoken to. And in addition, just that before this hearing started, and I can tell in our approach to it, we are inclined to always give the member the benefit of the doubt, but we have to follow the legislation and do everything that we have to do. But we hope it works out in favor of the member, and because the punishment for going over is pretty heavy. We're trying to fight that with legislation to make it fair, but we need to do our due justice here. We want to make sure that the person gets due process. So Ms. Chambers, I want you to be able to speak on, or whoever addresses the document, maybe we already covered it, maybe not. I didn't know how integral it was here.
Ms. Chambers, you have submitted a document that's labeled Chambers Exhibit 1. And so could you speak to that exhibit as to why you submitted that?
I'm not sure what it is because I don't think I called it Exhibit 1. So can you tell me what it is?
It's a document from payroll services from the Chicago Public Schools.
Uh-huh.
And
could, that is, oh, I don't have the page number here. We can pull that up on the screen. That's just the Chambers Exhibit 1. It should be towards the end, I think.
Ms. Chambers, the check date on this document is 4/19/2024. And so do you have a recollection of why you sent this in to the fund as one of the documents that you were relying on?
I'm still waiting to see it because I don't know what you're talking about right now.
Oh, okay, got it.
While they pull it up, would I be able to briefly describe it to her?
I'm sorry, Mr. What was that?
Could I add a brief comment here?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers, this was the pay stub that you had sent to CTPF staff that showed 2 days being subtracted from your pay stub. Do you recall sending that?
I do.
That is what we are talking about.
Okay.
So I think the question from Trustee Ochoa was to expand on that further, why you had submitted it, and so on and so forth.
Oh, I just wanted you to know that it was approved that those 2 days should not have been paid because I didn't work those days, but because they were in front line, I had gotten paid. So they took, we discussed paying those days back through a historical correction form, and that's the historical correction form was sent first. Before that exhibit, I had sent the historical correction form in. So that might have not have been Exhibit 1. That might have been Exhibit 2.
I am aware of what you are talking about. I don't believe that we were told to make that an exhibit.
Okay.
We're not we are willing to keep the record open.
Okay.
we can
Okay.
talk about that in a minute or so, but
Okay.
to submit that as an exhibit, as well as it sounds like there's other corrections or a single correction or possibly two. We are willing to leave the record open for you to submit those to us.
Okay. Okay, that'd be perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Chambers, do you have anything else to add in your case?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you very much. Mr.
But I
Ruffing, do you
do
have any?
want you all to,
Oh.
in your next hearing, if you have somebody who may not have gotten that information from substitute services about how that these days automatically transfer to payroll, even if you didn't work. I don't think everybody was aware of that information.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Ruffing, do you have any questions for Ms. Chambers at this time?
No further questions. We are ready to move on to closing.
Okay. All right. Ms. Chambers, at this time, since you have nothing further, your case is now closed. And we're going to go to the closing statements. And we're going to ask that counsel for the fund make his closing statement, and then you will also have an opportunity for a closing statement. And please understand that I am aware that there are additional documents that you're going to need here. But for now, to complete the record, we'll go to the closing statements. And so I'm going to ask Mr. Ruffing to proceed.
Thank you. Just want to take a moment here to thank everyone, and especially our member, Ms. Chambers, for being here today and helping illuminate the record and what is going on with the situation. In closing, the fund believes that based off the evidence that we have received as of today, in terms of documentary evidence, which include corrections from CPS, payroll data, it is still the fund's position that Ms. Chambers worked 141 days during the 2022-2023 school year. Now, with that being said, it does sound like a second correction was issued to CPS, and there might be another one in regards to mandatory days that subs had to be in attendance. As of today, we don't have the actual corrections and the actual submissions. So we are willing to keep the record open for those submissions. But as of today, based off the documents and information we have, we believe the record shows Ms. Chambers worked 141 days, but we of course would advocate for keeping the record open to determine if that is ultimately the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ruffing. Ms. Chambers, you now have an opportunity to make a closing statement for the record.
I think that we as substitutes know that it's our job to keep accurate records of our days, but we also we were also relying on Frontline being a reliable system, and it turned out not to be for that particular school year.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want to add?
That's it.
Okay. I understand that there is more documentation that is forthcoming in this matter that could affect the outcome of the case. And I think that the fund has acknowledged that in Mr. Ruffing's closing argument as well. Ms. Chambers, what normally happens is that we get a transcript of this, and then there's 14 days thereafter to submit additional evidence before I make a finding and recommendation to the fund. However, Mr. Ruffing has indicated that he would like to keep the record open to give you an opportunity to get the correct documentation that you need to the fund. And so I will keep the record open, and I would ask the fund to keep track of of this matter and let me know the status of any additional documents that Ms. Chambers submits. Is that satisfactory, Mr. Ruffing?
Would we be able to set a date on the submission? If 30 days from today, that's a month. If there was a correction submitted to CPS, a week or so ago, Joe is telling me that it takes about 2-3 weeks. So I think we would know from CPS at that time. And we are willing to extend it if that is still pending, but we don't want to lose track of what's going on. But 30 days, I mean, that would take us to May 24th?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is, since that's the Memorial Day holiday
Oh,
weekend, I'd like to keep the record open then until Wednesday, the 29th of May. Is that satisfactory, Mr. Ruffing?
Yes, and I would just add, Ms. Chambers, in terms of submitting to us, it would be the exact same method that you did for the Exhibit 1 here today, the pay stub, the email, or I suppose you could drop them off in person too.
Okay.
Ms. Chambers, I want to make sure that I confirm that you understand that I'm going to keep the record open for you to submit the additional documentation through May 29th. But that is a deadline. And if for whatever reason you require additional time, or if that happens with paperwork, you need to let the fund know that so that they can communicate with me. But for now, the deadline is May 29th. Is that okay with you?
That's fine. Thank you so much.
Okay. At this point, I'm sorry, go, we have a question.
I don't have a problem with the deadline, but, sorry, I wasn't talking all day. I don't have a problem with a deadline, but with, we have retirees and then 3 of us are actives. And sometimes it takes longer for that historical correction to come in. So I was fearing that if she had a deadline, it wouldn't be on her end, it would be on CPS's end too. Because once she does that historical correction and she sends it to CPS, sometimes I don't want to say sit on their hands, but they sit on their hands with the documentation and returning it. And if it's fault on their part that she doesn't receive the document, and then she doesn't receive it in time to achieve the deadline, then that would hinder her case.
Right. And in order to, we don't want a technicality to decide this. And so what we're going to do is that we have to set some deadline at this point. But if there's a problem with the paperwork, we will extend that deadline based on the need for that paperwork. So, and Mr. Ruffing, you will work with Ms. Chambers on that?
Yes, correct. We are not opposed to extending the 30-day record being open. If there's a correction submitted and we receive evidence of that, or CPS confirms that it's being, taken a look at, then yes, we will agree if we start brushing up on that 30-day limit.
Okay, yeah, because it may be no fault of hers. It may be CPS not providing the information on time.
Very good. Trustee Ochoa? Oh, you had a question or comment?
Well, comment, I guess. Trustee Nelson brought up the 2 days. I don't know if the administrative information days, I don't know if they're applicable to the case, but if they are, we should put that into consideration, how it might address this case. I hope we investigate that, and if it helps Ms. Chambers, that'd be terrific. But
Right. Ms. Chambers, just so that we're clear, there are 2 issues that we're leaving this open for. The first is that the May 9th date that you talked about, but also for the 2 administrative days that were mentioned. So if you would make sure that you are addressing both of those issues with getting the information from CPS.
Okay, I had forgotten about that. Thank you for adding that.
Oh, and wait a minute, I'd like to say something.
Yes,
first.
yes.
Thank you, Trustee Ochoa, for bringing that up again, because I thought it had been mentioned several times, and I thought you had it in your records, but you did or you didn't.
We have institute days, the mandatory days that you were speaking of. I'm not
Are
aware of.
different, totally
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, I'm
And,
not.
and actually, we were having a hearing, and I was listening to persons indicating that those were mandatory days. And at that time, that's why I mentioned that there should be some connection between CPS and the fund. And Attorney Hurtado, you remember that conversation, and it went through with the conversation with CPS to not add those days in as work days because the retirees were not before children. So it was agreed upon, but it's not in CPS rules per se. So I've mentioned that I'm on the committee with CPS. And one of the items to go into the contract would be those days with CPS in black and white, so that every sub is aware of them and not, only those subs who go through the committee, the CTU committee, substitute committee, who know about those days. Okay. So anyway, I just want to, clarify that.
Thank you. Thank you. Trustee Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you. And that is something that I brought up several years ago, and that's how it all started. There was someone who was charged or counted as working a day, and it was a teacher preparation day or student attendance. I already looked
That's
up.
what I just said, trustee.
No, I know that, but
Thank you.
I'm not finished, if I may.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is, if Mr. Ruffing, if you said October 21st, 2022, did you say October 22nd as well or not?
It was December 23rd was the second
Okay,
day.
so I looked it up already. That's what I did last time. Thank you, trustee Nelson. And October 21st, 2022 was a Friday. There was a school improvement day.
Yep.
And Friday, December 23rd, 2022 was also school improvement day. And as you said earlier, in agreement with you, the only outstanding day was where she said that she worked less than an hour. And a school improvement day, and I looked it up, it is on the internet. It states that it's a non-attendance day for students. So those two dates, and I can forward that to you, and then you can have that confirmation. But those two are clear. It's just the May 9th, I believe that. Is that correct?
Yes, and then I was unaware of the mandatory day, because I think institute days, mandatory days.
Right, there's
You
different.
know,
it-
they can't
it's
make it
la-
easier.
Yeah, it's labeled as a school improvement day.
Yeah,
I'll say
so,
it for you.
yeah, we would just to reiterate, the fund would urge Ms.
Which
Chambers
they were
to submit.
supposed to do from a couple of years ago, but I
Yeah.
guess depends leadership, things change and people forget. So just a reminder.
Yeah, we would urge Ms. Chambers to submit anything that she believes is relevant in a timely manner, or to communicate that you need more time.
Thank you.
Trustee Washington, who's participating remotely, has his hand up.
I'm just told that trustee Washington, who's participating remotely, has a question or a comment.
Good morning. So, yeah, so what my concern now is, in light of the information that has been shared today, as it pertains to these days that substitute, particularly retired substitute or guest teachers are mandated to work. I am concerned about how many other retirees has that affected that maybe have gone over on institute days. And I don't know who else was impacted with the 22, 23, with the way that was done in the front line, but is that an issue for that person or those persons as well? That's something that we as a fund need to be looking at and evaluating as well. Because personally, I think it's kind of unfair that the onus of keeping up with these days is on the employee, and the employee is dependent on information from CPS. And if the information is inaccurate, then the employee has the burden of proof to correct CPS's systems errors. So it really should be, and I don't know if this is something that as a fund that we need to be trying to implement between the fund and CPS, but there should be some type of monthly um, uh, accounting or audit of the amount of days the substitute teachers are working, because they're going into multiple buildings. It's not like you're dealing with one payroll clerk. Every school has a payroll clerk, and it's on that clerk to put that day in. And so it's unfair to expect a retired teacher to have to manage that process from home. They're going in multiple schools, they're dealing with multiple clerks, and then CPS's system is erroneous in the way that it's calculating that. So this is an issue that we need to look at as a fund as well. And I want us to make sure that we're making sure that other retirees are not falling into this scenario, because typically they go over a day or so, it's errors like that. I mean, now unless a retiree just stretch out and work a whole another month, they obviously weren't paying attention to the days. But when we're having a minuscule amount of days, 2, 3, 4 days, that's hard to track out of an entire school year, and especially when you're working in other areas. So I want us to make sure that we are checking that out. And the other thing specifically to Ms. Chambers is, we get this rectified, then she will have an opportunity to rescind that death benefit thing to cover the overage as well, correct?
Yes, correct. Yes, if the days are corrected.
All right.
I think it's fair to say that that the fund staff will work with Ms. Chambers to get the correct information into the record. Is that fair? A fair statement?
Yes, we attempt our best to work with all hearing, return to work hearing, requests for hearings that occur. We attempt to work with all members and will.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else to add before I close the hearing?
I'm sorry.
Trustee Washington, you were not done?
No, I just wanted to reiterate the last part of what I was saying, and I appreciate what you just said about the fund working with this particular incident. But what I'm saying is that moving forward, I don't know if it's the fund and the board need to come up with a better system to help our members keep track of their days. It is not fair. I think that is, if they were working, I would consider that excessive paperwork, which we have union contract language against as active teachers. That is excessive to expect a retiree to keep up with how many days they've worked in various schools. You have various people handling their payroll. I think that it should be, and I think that there should be a grace period. It either needs to be front loaded in a way where you know before the fact and not after the fact, which is what's often happening. And so it's record keeping, and the record keeper is Chicago Public Schools. It is not the employee. So we're expecting employees to keep up with their time, and that's kind of, I think, not fair. So what I'm asking and requesting is that CTPF works with CPS's payroll department to find some type of a way to make sure that retired teachers get a monthly accounting of how many days they have worked that month. Because for those that are working on a consistent basis, it roughly translates to about, I think, 2 days a week or 5 days within a pay period to hit 120 school days, 120 days within a school year. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I'm saying that that needs to be tracked so that they can see it, so that the pension fund can see it, and so that we're not being reactive, but being proactive. That's my point. This is a very reactive process that if we had a more proactive approach, it could be avoided in most instances.
Thank you, Trustee Washington. Thank you. If there's nothing else, then I will close the hearing. Is there anything else, Ms. Chambers or Mr. Ruffing?
I'll just note, Ms. Chambers, go ahead.
Mr. Ruff, I had a question. When you were asking me, were those days in front of kids when I was at Lawndale, that just hit me. Is that important? Is that something I should be aware of that I didn't know about? Whether the days that I work are in front of students or not? Does that mean anything?
The reason why I had asked that was to, first of all, get a general sense of, are we dealing with one school correction or multiple ones?
Okay,
In terms of
okay.
the teaching aspect of it, it essentially, in the past, we've seen situations where, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, there was, I believe, someone who was, I don't want to say they were like managing files, but there was something like that in the past. Does that ring any bells or not?
Yeah, sometimes we've had retirees who have returned to work, if you will, but not as teachers. So this all applies to returning to work as a teacher. They might have returned to work in the library or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why I'd asked that. Again, the record will be open, and you can submit documentation to show if it's your argument that you weren't teaching and you were that it didn't involve instructing students, you should include that information as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I was going to add was you will be getting a transcript of this hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so so that the record is clear, the record will remain open through May 29th, but may be extended further if necessary to obtain records and information from CPS. With that said, the hearing is now closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Something to ask the attorney and yourself to be clear for Ms. Chambers. If she's teaching now, subbing now for the 2023-2024 school year, regardless of this hearing, et cetera, let's say she's, I guess that would be a question for Ms. Chambers. If she's subbing right now?
Ms. Chambers, still there?
Okay, okay. So actually, what we're saying is one hearing has nothing to do with another hearing. So if she or you are subbing at this point, you still have that 140 days until June of this year. So be very careful because that's 140 for this year.
Okay.
It has not been extended, for the coming year. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes.
I was just going to make a quick comment before Ms. Chamber leaves. And I'm in agreement with the board, could keep better track of this. They should start tracking. But I would suggest to anyone, just as when you pay with legal tender out there, you always count your change. Always have your own record, because if we've seen the Board of Education has made mistakes, and even if they document everything, it's their interpretation. And we should ourselves, it's a burden, but if we're subbing, we should keep track of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Rodriguez.
You're welcome.
Okay, that'll close the record.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call?
Trustee Barajas,
Yes.
trustee Nelson,
Yes.
trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
Yes.
and trustee Washington.
Yes.
That's 5 ayes. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a great hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers.